Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage in the rainy state of Maine. But rain is better than snow, if you ask me. It's the first week of December 2022 and I'm still looking at green grass. Getting greener by the day. Today we're going to talk about roll cage tubing notching. It's how you fit it together. Also called coping, if you're a pipe fitter, I imagine. And there's at least 5 different ways to do it, probably more. When I built my first tube chassis in my parents' garage, I thought I had all the tools I could possibly need because I had a new, to me, 14-inch abrasive chop saw and an angle grinder. And all I did, sidebar, if you're shopping for an abrasive cutoff saw, 14-inch, make sure the vise will go 45 degrees either direction. Some only go 30 one direction and 45 the other. Mine would do both, and I just, lucky that's the way it worked out because I knew nothing about them. I bought it out of the back of a truck. I got a deal on it. I still have it. So, all I did with 45 at the piece of tubing in the vise one direction, 45 in the other if I was going straight to the next tubing, and then I'd grind it around, and the fit up was just fine. I didn't know any better, and I was MIG welding it. So today, modern day, I'm going to be TIG welding my chrome moly chassis, finishing up the details on my race 55 Chevy, and like I do all things now that I'm 3/4 of the way through life, probably, hopefully, try to improve things, try to make my skills better. I love tools. This is right in the wheelhouse of that. During the same time period when I was building my first tube chassis, a friend of mine let me borrow his notcher. It was a device you clamped into something really solid, more solid than I had. All I had is a flimsy little bench. And you put a long piece of pipe on it, and you could chomp, to chomper, a notch into it. And you could move it around and chomp it different ways. I never successfully cut a piece of metal with that thing. To this day, I believe it outsmarted me. And I returned it, and he looked at me funny like, you mean you couldn't figure out how to use it? Hey, I was young and determined. So then, let's just roll right into it. At some point, I believe it was when, right around Y2K, I was going to build another mild steel chassis for a 69 Nova body that I had, that I bought at a funeral, whole nother story. All good stories start like that. I bought a Nova body at a funeral. So I bought this wonderful piece of engineering, probably online, probably Harbor Freight, back when you had to order stuff from them online. I've stolen the vise off it the night before last. It was intact. Now the flaw with this style, and you can still buy these, they're less, I think they're $60 probably if you look online nowadays, is one, the vise needs to be shimmed so it's on the center line of the hole saw. As it comes, it's, the width, probably 1/8 of an inch, too close this direction. So a couple of washes, I had that all scienced out because I wanted, when you make your cut, you'd like it to be even on the tube. And I had this mounted in my drill press, just like this, same bolt I used and everything. And the biggest problem with this setup is this flimsy piece of angle iron right there. The whole thing was just an accident waiting to happen, and many times I messed up a perfectly good hole saw because the thing would move around. Looking at it today, if I took this piece without doing any modifications, just bolted it underneath, and you mounted that in the vise, a vise like this, and used it horizontally, I believe it would probably work okay, because I did a lot of notching with this. Even better if you just welded a piece of flat bar along about here somewhere so your vise could still move on an angle. If you welded a piece of flat bar right there and clamp that in the vise, this thing's usable. So it's certainly better than other methods up to that point. Sticking with the hole saw theme, I bought this one Monday morning online. Here it is Wednesday, and it showed up this morning. That's pretty good service. Now, if you shop this style, they're unmistakable because they're pretty blocky. And all the other ones I looked at, from the $100 one to the $400 one, were all steel. And the $100 one, I read a lot of bad reviews about the shaft breaking right there, or the adapter. I avoided that one. This particular one, as usual, I have nothing to do with these companies. Jeremy Well, so Jeremy Well, W-E-L-L, one word, International. And it comes in a Chinese box, but at least it's aluminum. And sadly, I'm probably contributing to the fact that somebody, and I haven't researched this, here in America made this wonderful style notcher, and this is an imported, cheap, stolen copy of that. So what I did is contributed to that problem. However, this one did get good reviews, and in interest, I knew I was going to be shooting this video, and I thought my buddy was actually asking about notchers, and I said, you know what? Maybe I wouldn't dislike them so much if I had one that was better. This is certainly sturdy. So I took it out of the box this morning. I assembled it. I put Never Sees on the threads because you got a steel bolt going into aluminum. The instructions, of course, didn't cover any of this. And the immediate flaw that I saw, not trying to rhyme, is it did not have this block on the bottom. And it has a nice dovetail for this, the hole saw to go up and down. I didn't want to be squeezing that in the vise. I mean, you could just clamp this in the vise, but it had 2 holes already. Like there should be another piece. So I just grabbed a piece of scrap aluminum, drilled and tapped it 3/8, and now I clamp that in the vise like this. I haven't cut anything with this yet, but I will before the video's over probably. So this notch is kind of genius. Now, if you're shopping for one, it seems like the good ones have a bolt and the bad ones have an Allen bolt right here. The actual adjustment, it's 24 millimeter. How you like my Harbor Freight wrench? Thing's 1.5 feet long. And all the Allen screws are metric. You can adjust the height here and the angle here with this bolt. Certainly a rugged unit. I wouldn't want it in steel because it would probably weigh 50 pounds. It has a scale here for the height for the different size tubing. It's 0 is the middle, and it goes 1 inch either direction. There's a scale here for angle for the vise. Basically, it's nice that they etched them in there and that somebody made an effort to make this, a quality tool. That's just a guide. You are much better off. In this case, all I did was take the flat side of my Allen wrench. I had this over in the vise and just run this over the top of the tubing, top and bottom. I had the tubing slid down. And same way for the hole saw, just square it on the tube and tighten it up. And then note the fact that the gauge is a 1/2 degree off in both directions. So I also ordered at the time 4 new hole saws, and I ordered 1 5/8. I believe, once again, I think I might be better off with 1.5 inches. If you watch the other videos where I was briefly talking about notching, the 1 5/8 is fine as long as you grind it back down so the metal's thick again, because it will make this wafer thin on either side. So I just right against the abrasive disc on my sander, just give it a few of these, and it ends up fitting very nice. So I will try this out and report back before the video's over, but we got a couple more notches to look at. I went ahead and made my first cut. Here it is in the raw. I just shut it off. I forgot to mention this has 2 sets of roller bearings that I lubed up with some assembly lube, because that's what was sitting on the bench. And I'm going to say I have my Milwaukee M18 drill in low gear, and this smoked right through there pretty decent. With a little bit of, getting used to it. I don't think the cut is perfectly square. So I'm going to move my vise, well, I say vise, but the connection between the hole saw and the vise. So maybe one more cut and I would have it done. This would clean right up in the sander, which I'll do next, but I'm sure it'll fit just fine. There's no reason to think it wouldn't. So I'm going to call this operation a success. I used some of my nasty black cutting oil. It has a very distinct smell, not good or bad, just a smell. And for the depth of cut, I usually take 1/3 of whatever the diameter of the tubing is. So in this case, it was, call it slightly over 1/2 inch. It's 1 5/8 inches. So a thick 1/2 inch, and it worked pretty well. Left just a little bit of the end for me to clean up. For my next contraption, this is the 1 5/8 inch angular cutter mounted in my Clausing Condia mill. The rotary table, also a gift from my buddy Charlie. This is a stolen vise off my original hole saw style notcher. And I'm still experimenting with this setup. For clearance, this is at 45-degree angle. It did a fantastic job. This would be great for making the short angular supports you need on the cage and stuff like that. For long pieces of tubing, I think I'd be running into stuff. It cuts like a dream. Last night, the rotating part of the rotary table stopped working, but it has 3 locks, so I can just manually move it. I put a angle finder stuck right to the tubing, digital angle finder, zeroed off the table, and set my degrees that way. So this is still a work in progress, but we're gaining. I can actually notch tubing with it. And finally, what is probably my go-to method, I built the whole car using the lathe with an end mill, a roughing end mill, mounted like this. I have lots of room to swing the tubing any direction. The only thing stopping me is other junk in my shop. So angle's not a problem, length is not a problem, speed is awesome, pretty much as fast as you can crank the handle. This does an excellent job. This was also a gift the other day. My buddy Charlie hooked me up with a cold air blower that you put right on the cut. It moves the chips out of the way, and it's supposed to be similar to using lube. So I've got it all hooked up and I'm ready to test it some more. Basically, the entire mill behind me is simulating an M18 Milwaukee drill, with the exception of how sturdy it is. That's the difference. The new hole saw style notcher works pretty good, but it's not. Nothing moves in that setup right there, which is pretty awesome. So last week, or the week before, when I was talking about end mills, I bought an end mill for each size of the chromoly tubing that I bought. And when I'm putting similar sizes together, like I have to make an X in the middle of the chassis, in that case, I'll use the end mill that matches the tubing diameter. But like I mentioned in this setup, when I make the small braces that go in the corner of the cage, I want those, regardless of the diameter of the tubing, I want the radius to fit an 1 5/8 inch tube. So I'm going to use the 1 5/8 inch saw, and that marries up pretty nice. So next, whenever the tube bender and stuff arrives, we'll go over that. I ordered one Saturday night. A couple things have changed about how I'm going to power it since then. Pretty exciting stuff. And the next video, I believe I have to take this transmission apart and see what's wrong with it. It came here with a problem, and that's probably next. So stay tuned if you're hungering for transmission, content, as they say. Hope you're having a great day. Stay dry, and I'll talk to you soon.